The morning sun cast long shadows across the wraparound porch of 1247 Maple Street as Maya Chen stood holding a manila envelope that would change everything. Her hands were steady now, but her heart hammered against her ribs as she rang the doorbell of her childhood home. 3 years ago, she'd walked away from this same porch in tears, her family's laughter echoing behind her. Today, she was walking back as their landlord. The door swung open, and her mother Linda appeared in her silk robe, coffee mug in hand. "Maya, what are you doing here so early? And why do you look so—" Linda paused, taking in her daughter's crisp navy blazer and the confident set of her shoulders. Professional. "I need to speak with you and Dad." "Is he home?" "Richard," Linda called over her shoulder, never taking her eyes off Maya. "Your daughter's here, and she's got that serious look again." Maya's father appeared moments later, adjusting his tie for another day at the accounting firm. "Maya, sweetheart, if this is about money again, we've talked about this. You need to find stable work instead of playing with those jewelry projects." The word projects hit Maya like a familiar slap, but this time she didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, a calm, knowing smile that made both parents step back slightly. "Actually, Dad, I'm here on business." Maya pulled out the legal documents, her voice steady and clear. "As of yesterday, I am the new owner of this property. Your rent is officially due on the 1st of every month, beginning 30 days from today." The coffee mug slipped from Linda's fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Neither parent seemed to notice. Richard's face drained of color as he stared at the papers Maya held out. "What are you talking about?" Linda whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm talking about the fact that Uncle Tom sold this land last week. You've been renting it from him for 8 years, and now you're renting it from me." Maya's voice remained calm, professional, almost gentle. "The property deed is right here, along with your new lease agreement." Richard snatched the papers with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the legal language. Maya watched his expression shift from confusion to disbelief to something that looked almost like fear. "This is impossible," he muttered. "How could you possibly afford? The down payment alone would be—" $300,000, Maya finished quietly. "I paid cash." The silence that followed was so complete, Maya could hear the neighbor's dog barking 3 houses down. She could see the wheels turning in her parents' minds, trying to reconcile the daughter they dismissed as a dreamer, with the woman standing before them, holding their future in her hands. "But your little jewelry business," Linda stammered, still staring at the documents. "You said you were barely breaking even." "I said a lot of things you didn't bother to listen to." Maya tucked the papers back into the envelope. "I'll give you some time to process this. The lease terms are standard. Market rate. First and last month due at signing. I think you'll find I'm a fair landlord." As Maya turned to leave, she paused at the top of the porch steps. "Oh, and Mom, it was never just a hobby." Maya could still smell the lavender sachets that filled Grandma Rose's sewing room, even 3 years later. As she drove away from her parents' stunned faces, her mind drifted back to those golden afternoons when she was 7 years old, sitting cross-legged on the Persian rug while her grandmother's weathered hands guided her small fingers through intricate beadwork patterns. "See how the light catches the silver when you twist it just so?" Grandma Rose had whispered, her voice soft with the wisdom of 70 years. "Jewelry isn't just decoration, Maya. It's storytelling. Each piece carries the maker's heart." Those lessons had started innocently enough. While Derek practiced piano scales in the living room, earning applause from their parents for every perfect performance, Maya disappeared into Rose's sanctuary. The room was filled with vintage sewing machines, mason jars brimming with colorful beads, and delicate tools that felt like magic wands in Maya's young hands. Rose taught her the difference between sterling silver and silver-plated wire. how to shape metal without breaking it, and most importantly, how to see beauty in the smallest details. Your great-grandmother Elena came to America with nothing but a sewing needle and 5 copper coins, Rose had told her during one of their afternoon sessions. She turned those coins into her first jewelry pieces and sold them on the street corner. By the time she died, she owned 3 shops and had sent all 4 of her children to university. Maya had treasured these stories, but they remained locked in Rose's sewing room. At family dinners, Derek's achievements dominated the conversation. His acceptance to honors classes, his debate team victories, his early admission to law school, each milestone celebrated with special dinners and proud phone calls to relatives. Maya's creations, the delicate earrings she'd made for her mother's birthday, or the bracelet she'd crafted for her father's anniversary, were acknowledged with brief smiles and quick, "very nice, sweetheart" comments before the conversation returned to Derek's latest accomplishment. During high school, Maya tried to bridge both worlds. She maintained a 3.8 GPA and earned her business administration degree, hoping to prove she could be both creative and practical. But even when she presented her parents with a detailed business plan for her jewelry venture during her senior year of college, complete with market research and financial projections, her father had patted her head and said, "It's wonderful that you have hobbies, Maya, but hobbies don't pay mortgages." The breaking point came the summer after graduation. Maya had spent weeks creating a custom necklace set for her cousin's wedding, working late into the night to perfect every detail. The bride was thrilled, posting photos all over social media and generating dozens of inquiries from her friends. Maya saw it as validation, proof that her work had real value and market demand. But when she excitedly shared the news at Sunday dinner, describing the orders pouring in and her plans to expand, Uncle Tom had chuckled and shaken his head. "That's sweet, Maya, but you can't build a life on making pretty things. You need to find a real job with benefits and a steady paycheck. This arts and crafts phase needs to end." Those words, arts and crafts phase, had cut deeper than any criticism because they dismissed not just her work, but her dreams, her passion, and everything Grandma Rose had taught her about carrying forward their family's creative legacy. At 23, Maya's life looked nothing like the success story her family expected. While Derek worked late nights at his prestigious law firm, earning praise and bonuses that funded his downtown loft, Maya split her time between pulling espresso shots at Corner Cafe and hunching over her jewelry bench in a cramped studio apartment that smelled perpetually of coffee and metal polish. Her workspace consisted of a folding table wedged between her bed and kitchenette, illuminated by a desk lamp she'd bought at a garage sale. Mason jars lined the windowsill, filled with sorted beads and findings, while her tools hung from a pegboard she'd installed herself after watching 3 YouTube tutorials. The apartment's thin walls meant she could hear her upstairs neighbor's television every night, but the rent was all she could afford on her part-time barista salary. Every morning at Corner Cafe, Maya served coffee to business professionals who looked right through her. Their conversations filled with stock options and promotion tracks that felt like a foreign language. She'd watch them check their phones for important emails while she wiped down tables and restocked napkin dispensers. Some days, she'd catch herself staring at women wearing expensive jewelry, analyzing the craftsmanship, and wondering if her own work could ever command such respect. The contrast became painfully obvious during family gatherings. Derek would arrive in his tailored suits, regaling everyone with stories about high-profile cases and client dinners at exclusive restaurants. Uncle Tom would nod approvingly, asking detailed questions about Derek's career trajectory and investment portfolio. Maya would sit quietly, her hands bearing small cuts from jewelry wire and her fingernails stained with metal polish, listening to conversations about real estate investments and retirement planning. "Maya's still figuring things out," became her mother's standard explanation to relatives who asked about her younger child's career. The phrase stung because it reduced her genuine passion and growing skills to mere confusion about her life direction. Linda would quickly redirect conversations to Derek's latest achievement, leaving Maya feeling like a footnote in her own family's story. The financial reality was harsh. Maya's coffee shop wages barely covered rent, utilities, and basic groceries. Her jewelry supplies came from her tips, which meant choosing between eating dinner and buying the silver wire she needed for a custom order. She'd learned to live on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, saving every spare dollar for materials and tools. While Derek complained about his expensive gym membership, Maya couldn't afford a haircut. But the worst part wasn't the financial struggle. It was the constant sense of being invisible. At Sunday dinners, Derek's phone would ring with work calls that everyone treated as urgent and important. When Maya's phone buzzed with a potential client inquiry, she'd silence it quickly, knowing that any mention of her jewelry work would be met with polite but dismissive smiles. Her family loved her, but they saw her as the dreamer who needed to grow up, not as an entrepreneur building something meaningful. Late at night, alone in her tiny apartment with jewelry sketches spread across her makeshift desk, Maya would sometimes wonder if they were right. Maybe she was just a barista with an expensive hobby. Maybe all the late nights and scraped-together materials were just delaying the inevitable, getting a real job and abandoning the dream that kept her awake until dawn, creating pieces that told stories no one seemed interested in hearing. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Maya was steaming milk for the breakfast rush at Corner Cafe. Her phone buzzed insistently in her apron pocket, and she almost ignored it, another bill collector or robocall interrupting her already hectic day. But something made her glance at the screen during a brief lull, and her heart nearly stopped when she saw the name. Bella Vista Boutique. Sarah Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, owned the most prestigious boutique in the arts district. For months, Maya had been trying to get her attention, dropping off business cards and samples whenever she could scrape together the courage. Now, Sarah was calling, and Maya's hands shook as she answered. "Maya? I've been looking at the pieces you left with me. Can you come in this afternoon? I think we need to talk." The rest of Maya's shift passed in a blur of spilled coffee and distracted customer service. By 3 o'clock, she was standing in Bella Vista's gleaming showroom, surrounded by displays that showcased work from established local artists. Sarah emerged from the back office, Maya's sample pieces in her hands. "These are exceptional," Sarah said without preamble. "The craftsmanship is professional grade, and your design aesthetic is exactly what my clients are looking for. I want to offer you a consignment agreement, 30 pieces to start, with exclusive rights to your work in this district." Maya's knees went weak. A consignment agreement with Bella Vista meant her jewelry would be displayed alongside pieces selling for hundreds of dollars. It meant professional photographs, proper lighting, and customers who understood the value of handcrafted work. Most importantly, it meant validation that her years of sacrifice weren't in vain. "The holiday season is coming up," Sarah continued, pulling out a contract. "If these pieces sell well, I'd like to discuss a more permanent arrangement, maybe even featuring you in our spring artist showcase." Maya signed the papers with trembling hands, her mind already racing with possibilities. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. This was it, the breakthrough she'd been working toward. Finally, she'd have something concrete to show her family, proof that her hobby was becoming a legitimate business. That Sunday, Maya arrived at family dinner with a confidence she hadn't felt in years. She'd spent the entire week preparing her announcement, rehearsing how she'd explain the boutique deal and what it meant for her future. Derek was already there, scrolling through his phone, while their parents bustled around the kitchen. "I have some exciting news," Maya announced as they sat down to eat. "I just signed my first major retail contract. Bella Vista Boutique is carrying my jewelry line." The room fell silent. Linda looked up from her plate, a curious expression crossing her face. "That's the expensive place downtown, isn't it?" "Yes, and they're featuring 30 of my pieces. If they sell well, there's potential for a permanent partnership and—" "How much commission are they taking?" Richard interrupted, his accounting mind immediately focusing on the numbers. 30%, but that's standard for—" "And what's your profit margin after materials and labor?" For a moment, Maya thought she detected genuine interest in her father's questions. Maybe, finally, they were ready to see her work as a real business venture. Maya's hope evaporated as quickly as steam from her morning coffee. What started as her father's seemingly interested questions about profit margins quickly transformed into a familiar interrogation that felt more like a business audit than family support. 30% commission means you're only keeping 70 cents on every dollar, Richard continued, his tone shifting from curious to concerned. And that's before you factor in materials, tools, your time investment. Maya, this sounds like you're working for less than minimum wage. Dad, you don't understand. This is about building a brand, establishing relationships. Relationships don't pay rent, Uncle Tom interjected from across the table, setting down his wine glass with authority. I've seen dozens of young people chase these creative dreams. You know what happens? They waste their 20s playing artist and then scramble to catch up when reality hits. Maya felt her chest tighten, but she pushed forward. This boutique caters to high-end clients. The owner thinks my work could sell for $200 to $300 per piece. If even half the collection sells, if, Linda emphasized, shaking her head. Maya, honey, you're 23 years old. You should be building a career with benefits, not chasing maybes and what-ifs. But this is real progress, Maya insisted, her voice rising slightly. Sarah said my craftsmanship is professional grade. She wants to feature me in their spring showcase. Feature you where exactly? Derek looked up from his phone for the first time, a condescending smile playing at his lips. In a little boutique that probably sees maybe a dozen customers a day? Maya, I close deals worth more than that store's annual revenue. The comparison hit like a physical blow. Maya stared at her brother, seeing not just dismissal, but pity in his expression. This isn't about money, Derek. It's about doing work that matters to me. Work that matters? Uncle Tom laughed, the sound harsh and grating. Maya, you're playing with toys while life passes you by. You think making pretty trinkets is going to support you when you're 40, 50? What happens when your hands get arthritis and you can't string beads anymore? It's not just stringing beads, Maya said quietly, her voice barely audible above the clinking of silverware. I design everything from scratch. I work with precious metals, gemstones. This is exactly why you need a real job with benefits, Linda declared, standing to clear plates as if the conversation was over. Health insurance, retirement contributions, sick leave. These boutique fantasies don't provide security. Maya watched her mother stack dishes with practiced efficiency, dismissing her announcement as easily as clearing dinner remnants. The moment she'd dreamed about for weeks, sharing her first professional success with her family, had dissolved into another lecture about practicality. Then Derek's phone rang, and everything stopped. He glanced at the screen and immediately answered. Peterson, Klein & Associates, Derek Chen speaking. His voice transformed, becoming confident and professional as he discussed legal strategy with a client. The entire family waited respectfully while Derek handled his important call, nodding approvingly at his composed demeanor. When he finally hung up, Richard beamed with pride. Emergency consultation, Derek explained. Clients willing to pay triple overtime for weekend work. Looks like I'll be pulling another all-nighter, but the bonus will be worth it. Now that's what I call real work, Uncle Tom declared, raising his glass in a toast. Maya sat in stunned silence as her family celebrated Derek's late-night phone call, while her boutique contract, the biggest professional milestone of her life, lay forgotten on the table like a discarded napkin. The drive home from that disastrous Sunday dinner felt like the longest 20 minutes of Maya's life. She gripped the steering wheel of her aging Honda Civic, knuckles white, as tears blurred her vision. The boutique contract sat crumpled in her passenger seat. She'd grabbed it from the table as her family moved on to discuss Derek's latest legal victory, treating her announcement like it had never happened. Back in her studio apartment, Maya sat on her bed, staring at the folding table that served as her workspace. The jewelry pieces scattered across its surface, half-finished earrings, a bracelet she'd been designing for weeks, suddenly looked pathetic under the harsh fluorescent light. Maybe Uncle Tom was right. Maybe she was just playing with toys while real life passed her by. The next Sunday, Maya called in sick to family dinner. She spent the day in her pajamas, eating cereal from the box, and scrolling through social media, watching her high school classmates post about promotions, engagements, and house purchases. Everyone seemed to have figured out the secret to adult success, except her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Hope you feel better soon. Derek has big news to share next week." The pattern continued for months. Maya stopped answering family calls, letting them go to voicemail where she'd hear brief messages about Derek's latest achievements or invitations to celebrations she couldn't bear to attend. The isolation felt like a physical weight pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe some mornings. At Corner Cafe, Maya became a ghost of herself. She mixed drinks mechanically, smiled when required, and went through the motions of customer service while feeling completely disconnected from the world around her. Her coworkers began commenting on her withdrawn behavior, but Maya brushed off their concerns with excuses about being tired or stressed. The worst part was how the rejection poisoned her relationship with her own work. Every time she sat down to create something new, she'd hear Uncle Tom's voice calling her pieces pretty trinkets, or her father questioning whether she was earning minimum wage. Some nights, she'd start a design only to abandon it halfway through, convinced it was worthless before it was even finished. Sleep became elusive. Maya would lie awake until 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and replaying that dinner conversation. She'd imagined different scenarios where she'd defended herself better, where she'd somehow made them understand the value of what she was building. But in the harsh light of dawn, those fantasies crumbled, leaving her feeling more alone than ever. The boutique sales trickled in slowly. A few pieces here and there, nothing dramatic enough to silence the voices in her head, questioning her choices. Maya found herself checking her bank account obsessively, calculating and recalculating whether she could afford to keep pursuing this dream or if she should start looking for real jobs like her family insisted. Friends from college began reaching out less frequently as Maya declined invitation after invitation, claiming she was too busy or too broke to join them for dinners or weekend trips. She told herself she was protecting them from her negativity, but really, she was protecting herself from more questions about when she'd get serious about her career. Maya had never felt so utterly alone, carrying the weight of her family's disappointment while trying to nurture a dream that felt increasingly fragile with each passing day. Maya was hunched over her jewelry bench at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, squinting at a delicate wire wrapping that refused to cooperate when she heard the soft knock on her apartment door. She froze, wire cutters suspended midair. Nobody visited her anymore, especially not this late. Her first thought was that a neighbor was complaining about noise, though she'd been working quietly for hours. Through the peephole, she saw a familiar silhouette holding what appeared to be a covered dish. Maya's heart jumped as she recognized the stooped shoulders and carefully pinned gray hair. "Grandma Rose?" Maya whispered as she opened the door. "What are you doing here? How did you even get up the stairs?" "Very carefully, dear," Rose chuckled, pushing past Maya with surprising energy for her 78 years. "And don't you dare ask how I got your address. I have my ways." She set the covered dish on Maya's tiny kitchen counter and turned to survey the apartment, her keen eyes taking in the makeshift workspace and the jewelry pieces scattered across every available surface. "I brought you some of that chicken soup you used to love," Rose said gently. "The one with the little star noodles. Figured you might not be eating properly, living on your own like this." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She hadn't realized how desperately she'd needed someone to show up, to care whether she was eating or sleeping or slowly disappearing into her own isolation. "Grandma, I'm fine. You didn't need to—" "Hush now." Rose moved toward the jewelry display with obvious purpose, her weathered fingers hovering over a silver bracelet Maya had completed the week before. "May I?" Maya nodded, watching as her grandmother examined the piece with the practiced eye of someone who understood craftsmanship. Rose turned the bracelet slowly, studying the intricate metalwork and the way Maya had incorporated tiny seed pearls into the design. "This is extraordinary work, Maya," Rose said quietly. "The technique, the attention to detail, this is master-level craftsmanship." Your great-grandmother Elena would be so proud." "The family doesn't think so," Maya whispered, her voice cracking slightly. Rose set the bracelet down carefully and turned to face her granddaughter. "The family doesn't understand because they've forgotten what it means to create something beautiful with your own hands. They measure everything in dollars and job titles, but they've lost sight of what really matters." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, ornate jewelry box that Maya had never seen before. "This belonged to Elena. I've been saving it for the right moment." Rose opened the box to reveal a stunning vintage necklace. The silver darkened with age, but the workmanship still breathtaking. "She made this when she was about your age," Rose continued. "Sold it to buy ingredients for her first week in America, then spent the next 40 years building an empire. But it all started with one beautiful piece that people told her was just a waste of time." Maya took the box with trembling hands, feeling the weight of family history and expectation, but also something else: validation. "I've been buying your pieces, you know," Rose admitted with a conspiratorial smile. "3 necklaces and 2 pairs of earrings. Been showing them to the ladies at church. Half of them want to place orders." For the first time in months, Maya laughed. A real, genuine laugh that seemed to echo through her tiny apartment and chase away some of the loneliness that had been suffocating her. The morning after Grandma Rose's visit, Maya woke up with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. Elena's vintage necklace sat on her nightstand, catching the early sunlight streaming through her small window. For the first time since that devastating family dinner, Maya felt connected to something larger than her own doubts and fears. She called in sick to Corner Cafe and spent the entire day reorganizing her workspace with military precision. The folding table was cleared and properly set up, tools arranged by function, and her scattered inventory cataloged in a notebook she'd bought specifically for tracking orders. If she was going to build something real, she needed to start thinking like a real business owner. That afternoon, Maya reached out to Zoe Martinez, her college roommate who'd graduated with a marketing degree and was working at a digital agency downtown. They'd kept in touch sporadically, but Maya had been too embarrassed about her situation to maintain close contact. Now, she swallowed her pride and made the call. "Maya Chen!" Zoe's voice was warm and genuinely excited. "Girl, I've been wondering what happened to you. I saw some jewelry posts on your Instagram months ago, and then you just went dark." "I need help, Zoe. Professional help." Maya took a deep breath. "I want to turn this jewelry thing into a real business, but I don't know the first thing about marketing or online sales." "Are you kidding me? I've been dying to work on something creative. The corporate accounts are sucking my soul dry." Zoe's enthusiasm was infectious. "Send me photos of everything you've made. I want to see it all." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya and Zoe met every evening after Zoe finished her day job. While Maya worked on new pieces, Zoe built them a professional website, set up social media accounts, and created a content strategy that positioned Maya's jewelry as heirloom quality pieces for the modern woman. "You're not just making jewelry," Zoe explained, as she photographed Maya's latest creation against a carefully arranged backdrop. "You're carrying forward a family tradition of craftsmanship. That's your story. That's what makes you different from every other jewelry maker online." Maya began working 18-hour days, splitting time between her cafe shifts and her expanding jewelry operation. She invested every tip and spare dollar into professional-grade tools and higher-quality materials. The seed pearl supplier she'd been buying from started offering her wholesale prices when her orders grew larger and more frequent. The breakthrough came 3 months later, when a celebrity stylist named Marcus Powell discovered Maya's Instagram account. He'd been searching for unique pieces for an upcoming magazine shoot and was drawn to Maya's combination of traditional techniques with contemporary design. "I need 6 pieces by Friday," he said during their phone call. "Budget is $1,500 for the lot, and if the shoot goes well, I'll want to discuss an ongoing relationship." Maya hung up the phone in stunned silence. $1,500 was more than she made in 2 months at the cafe. But more than the money, Marcus was treating her like a professional, discussing delivery timelines, usage rights, and future collaborations, as if her success was inevitable, rather than surprising. That night, Maya worked until dawn, but for the first time in her life, the exhaustion felt like victory rather than struggle. She was building something real, something that would soon be impossible for her family to dismiss as a hobby. 6 months after Marcus Powell's first order, Maya had quietly hired 3 part-time employees and moved her operation into a small warehouse space, but her family remained completely oblivious to her transformation. She'd learned to compartmentalize her worlds so thoroughly that when Derek's engagement party arrived in late spring, she slipped back into her old role as the struggling younger sister without missing a beat. Maya arrived at the upscale restaurant wearing one of her own creations, a statement necklace featuring hand-forged silver leaves intertwined with freshwater pearls that had taken her 2 weeks to perfect. The piece was worth $800, but to her family, it was just another example of Maya dressing up for special occasions. "Maya, sweetheart." Linda air-kissed her daughter's cheek, then immediately focused on the necklace. "That's absolutely gorgeous. Where did you find such an expensive-looking piece? Please tell me you didn't blow your coffee shop money on costume jewelry." Before Maya could answer, Uncle Tom approached with his characteristic knowing smile. "Let me guess. You borrowed it from one of those fancy boutiques where you're trying to sell your little crafts?" He chuckled and patted Maya's shoulder condescendingly. "Smart thinking. Kidding people into thinking you can afford the real thing." Maya's jaw clenched, but she kept her voice level. "Actually, I made it." "Oh, honey," Linda laughed, examining the necklace more closely. "This looks professionally made. The metalwork is so intricate. Are you sure you didn't just buy something similar and convince yourself you could make it?" Derek joined the conversation, his arm around his fiancée Jessica, a successful marketing executive who'd been eyeing Maya's necklace with obvious appreciation. "Maya's always been creative," he said with the tone people use when talking about children's art projects. "Remember those friendship bracelets she used to make in middle school?" "This is beautiful work," Jessica interjected, studying the piece with a professional eye. "The design is really sophisticated. Maya, do you have a business card? I have some friends who might be interested in custom pieces." Maya felt a flicker of hope, but Uncle Tom quickly extinguished it. "Jessica, that's sweet of you to encourage her, but Maya needs to focus that creativity on finding a husband instead of playing with beads. She's 26 now. Time to get serious about her future." "Maybe you should consider taking some business classes," Richard suggested, joining the circle. "Learn about real entrepreneurship, not this arts and crafts hobby. I could introduce you to some people in the corporate world." "Dad, I actually have been running a business," Maya began, but Linda was already redirecting the conversation. "Speaking of business, Derek, tell everyone about the Henderson merger. Richard's been bragging about your negotiations all week." As Derek launched into a detailed account of his latest legal victory, Maya watched her family's faces light up with pride and interest. Their questions were thoughtful, their praise genuine, their respect obvious. When Derek mentioned the 6-figure bonus he'd receive upon closing, Uncle Tom raised his glass in a toast to real success. Maya stood there wearing a necklace worth more than most people's monthly salary, having generated more revenue in the past month than Derek's bonus, yet she remained invisible. Her family's blindness wasn't just about money. It was about their inability to see her as anything other than the dreamy little sister who needed guidance and protection from her own impractical ambitions. Maya's world shifted on a rainy Thursday morning in October when her phone rang with an unexpected call from her business attorney, Jennifer Walsh. They'd been working together for months on trademark applications and business incorporation, but Jennifer's tone carried an urgency Maya had never heard before. "Maya, I just got off the phone with a real estate contact of mine. There's a situation you need to know about immediately," Jennifer said without preamble. "Chen Development Holdings is quietly liquidating several properties. Your uncle's company is in financial trouble." Maya's hand tightened around the phone. Uncle Tom's development company had been the family's pride for over a decade, funding his children's private school educations and financing the family's comfortable lifestyle. "How bad are we talking?" Bad enough that they're selling off rental properties below market value to generate quick cash flow, including the property where your parents live. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. Her parents had rented the house on Maple Street for 8 years, always under the assumption that it was a family arrangement, below market rent in exchange for Uncle Tom's generosity, and keeping the property in excellent condition. They'd never owned it outright, something Maya had somehow forgotten in the chaos of her own struggles. "The listing goes public next week," Jennifer continued. "But my contact says they're already fielding private offers. Your uncle needs to close fast, which means he's probably taking the first reasonable bid." Maya stared out her warehouse window at the parking lot where her employees' cars sat next to delivery trucks from her suppliers. 6 months ago, she'd been counting tips to buy wire and beads. Now her business account contained enough money to make serious decisions, life-changing decisions. "Jennifer, what would it take to make an offer? For that property? Based on the tax records, probably around $300,000. But Maya, this would be a significant investment for someone your age. Are you sure you want to tie up that much capital in real estate?" Maya thought about every family dinner where her achievements had been dismissed, every conversation where her dreams had been reduced to hobbies, every moment she'd felt invisible in her own family. "I'm not buying it as an investment. I'm buying it as a statement." Over the next week, Maya worked with Jennifer to structure the purchase through a shell company called Pacific Jewelry Holdings, LLC. The name was generic enough to avoid immediate recognition while still honoring the business that had made the purchase possible. They crafted an all-cash offer that Uncle Tom couldn't refuse, $20,000 above asking price with a 7-day closing period. Maya insisted on complete confidentiality until the deed was transferred. She wanted the element of surprise, the moment of revelation when her family realized their struggling daughter had just become their landlord. It wasn't about revenge, though she couldn't deny the poetic justice. It was about finally, definitively proving that their dismissal of her abilities had been catastrophically wrong. The closing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Maya arranged to pick up the keys and legal documents that same day, planning to visit the house on Saturday morning when she knew her parents would be home, probably reading the newspaper and discussing Derek's latest career moves over coffee. As she signed the final papers, Maya realized she was about to cross a line that would forever change her relationship with her family. There would be no going back to being the overlooked daughter once she walked up those familiar porch steps with a deed in her hand. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that made the maple trees along her childhood street glow like burnished copper. Maya sat in her car outside 1247 Maple Street for a full 10 minutes, engine off, watching the house where she'd grown up. Smoke curled from the chimney, and she could see her father through the kitchen window, probably reading the financial section while her mother prepared their weekend breakfast routine. The manila envelope on her passenger seat contained documents that would change everything: the property deed, the new lease agreement, and a formal notice that their monthly rent was now due to Pacific Jewelry Holdings, LLC. Maya had structured everything professionally, fairly but unmistakably. Market rate rent, standard lease terms, 30 days notice. No family discount, but no vindictive pricing either. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "You sure about this? Once you ring that doorbell, there's no going back." Maya typed back quickly. "I've been invisible to them for years. Time to become unforgettable." She walked up the familiar flagstone path, noticing details she'd never paid attention to before. The loose board on the third porch step that Uncle Tom had never fixed, the paint peeling around the front door frame, the garden beds that her mother maintained so meticulously. All of it belonged to her now. The doorbell's chime echoed through the house, followed by her mother's familiar footsteps. Linda opened the door wearing her weekend uniform of yoga pants and an oversized sweater, coffee mug in hand, reading glasses perched on her nose. "Maya, what a surprise! You're up early for a Saturday." Linda's smile was genuine but distracted. Come in. Your father's in the kitchen if you want coffee." "Actually, Mom, I need both of you. This is official business." Something in Maya's tone made Linda's smile falter. She called for Richard, who appeared moments later in his weekend casual wear, newspaper still in hand. "Official business?" Richard asked, his accountant's instincts immediately alert. "Maya, if this is about money—" "In a way it is." Maya pulled out the manila envelope with steady hands. "As of yesterday afternoon, I am the new owner of this property. Your rent is officially due on the 1st of every month, beginning 30 days from today." The silence that followed was so complete, Maya could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Linda's coffee mug remained frozen halfway to her lips, while Richard's newspaper slowly lowered as his brain processed what he'd just heard. "What did you just say?" Linda whispered. "I said I bought this house. Uncle Tom's company was liquidating assets, and I made an all-cash offer through my business entity. The deed is right here, along with your new lease agreement." Richard's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something that looked almost like panic. "Maya, this is impossible. The down payment alone would be—" $300,000, Maya finished calmly, "which I paid in full yesterday at closing." Linda finally set down her coffee mug, her hand trembling slightly. "But your jewelry hobby, you work at a coffee shop. I haven't worked at Corner Cafe in 8 months, Mom. My jewelry business generated $400,000 in revenue last year." The numbers hung in the air like a challenge to everything they thought they knew about their youngest daughter. The color drained from Richard's face as he stared at the legal documents in Maya's hands. His accounting mind immediately began calculating the implications. Not just the financial reality of what his daughter had accomplished, but the devastating miscalculation he'd made about her capabilities. "400,000? He repeated weakly, sinking onto the living room couch, as if his legs could no longer support him. "Maya, that's more than I made last year at the firm." Linda stood frozen in the doorway, her coffee mug forgotten as she processed the seismic shift occurring in her understanding of her youngest child. "But you never said anything. All those family dinners when we talked about Derek's salary, your job at the cafe. I tried to tell you," Maya said quietly. "Remember the boutique contract? The magazine feature? The celebrity stylist orders? You dismissed every milestone as hobby money and told me to get a real job." The front door burst open as Derek arrived for his regular Saturday visit, Jessica trailing behind him with bakery boxes from their favorite downtown cafe. "Surprise! We brought croissants and—" He stopped mid-sentence, taking in the tense atmosphere and his parents' shell-shocked expressions. "What's going on?" "Your sister just informed us that she owns our house," Richard said numbly, still staring at the deed. Derek laughed, the sound sharp and disbelieving. "Very funny, Dad. Maya, what's this really about?" Maya handed him a copy of the lease agreement. Derek's legal training kicked in as he scanned the document, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion to genuine shock. "This is real," he said slowly. "Maya, how the hell did you afford Pacific Jewelry Holdings, LLC? That's you?" "That's my business entity, yes." Jessica moved closer to examine the documents over Derek's shoulder, her marketing background helping her process the implications faster than the rest of the family. "Maya, this means your business is generating serious revenue, like serious enough to qualify for commercial loans and—" "No loans," Maya interrupted. "Cash purchase." Uncle Tom's voice boomed from the front porch as he let himself in, his usual Saturday morning routine of checking on the family property. "Whose car is that blocking the driveway? Richard, you need to tell your neighbors about—" He stopped when he saw Maya standing in the center of the room, legal documents in hand. "Tom," Richard said heavily, "Maya bought the house." Uncle Tom's laugh was automatic, dismissive. "That's hilarious. Maya can barely afford—" The laugh died as he saw his nephew's pale face and the official documents. "You're not joking." "I bought it from your company yesterday," Maya said, meeting his gaze directly. "Chen Development Holdings was liquidating assets. I made an all-cash offer $20,000 above asking price." Uncle Tom's face went through a range of emotions: surprise, embarrassment, and finally, a grudging respect mixed with something that looked like fear. The man who'd spent years lecturing Maya about real business had just lost a property to the niece he'd dismissed as playing with toys. My God, Linda whispered, finally finding her voice. Maya, we had no idea. All this time we thought— You thought I was failing, Maya finished. You were so convinced that creativity couldn't generate real income that you never bothered to listen when I tried to tell you otherwise. The family that had spent years looking through Maya as if she were invisible now couldn't take their eyes off her. Standing in the living room where she'd spent countless childhood hours, feeling overlooked and undervalued, Maya experienced something she hadn't expected. Not the rush of vindictive triumph she'd imagined, but a profound sense of peace. The weight she'd carried for years, the constant need to prove herself worthy of their attention and respect, simply lifted away like morning fog. I want to be clear about something, Maya said, her voice steady and calm as she looked at each family member in turn. This isn't about revenge. I'm not trying to hurt you or make you suffer. Derek lowered the lease agreement, studying his sister with new eyes. Then what is this about? Maya walked to the large window overlooking the backyard, where she'd spent so many afternoons feeling invisible, while Derek's achievements dominated dinner conversations. It's about boundaries. It's about finally having the power to set the terms of our relationship instead of always being at the mercy of your approval. She turned back to face them, noting how Uncle Tom had unconsciously stepped back, how her parents sat on the edge of the couch like students waiting for a grade, how Jessica watched with obvious respect and fascination. For years, you taught me that my dreams didn't matter unless they generated the kind of success you could understand and respect. You measured my worth in salary figures and job titles, dismissing everything I was passionate about as childish hobbies. Maya's voice remained gentle, but her words carried undeniable authority. Well, you were right about one thing. Money does talk. And now mine is speaking loud enough for you to finally hear it. Richard opened his mouth to speak, but Maya held up a hand, not ready to let anyone else control the narrative yet. I built this business while you were all convinced I was failing. I hired employees while you suggested I find a husband instead of playing with beads. I generated more revenue than Derek's law firm's salary while you told me to get a real job with benefits. She paused, letting the magnitude of their misjudgment settle in the room. The saddest part isn't that you were wrong about my potential. It's that you never bothered to really look. Linda's eyes filled with tears, but Maya felt only compassion, not anger. The bitter resentment that had poisoned her heart for so long had transformed into something cleaner, more powerful: self-respect. I don't need your validation anymore, Maya continued, and realized she meant it completely. I don't need you to understand my business, or celebrate my milestones, or finally see me as successful. I see myself clearly, and that's enough. Uncle Tom shifted uncomfortably. The man who'd built his identity on being the family's business authority, now face to face with his catastrophic failure to recognize real entrepreneurship when it was sitting at his dinner table. Maya, he began, his voice smaller than she'd ever heard it. I'm not angry with you, Uncle Tom, or any of you. And Maya realized this was true. The anger had burned away, leaving behind something much stronger: complete independence from their opinions. You gave me exactly what I needed, actually. You taught me that I could only count on myself, that I had to build something so undeniable that no one could dismiss it. So thank you. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was the silence of a woman who had finally, completely, found her own voice. The sound of soft footsteps on the hardwood floors broke the heavy silence, and everyone turned as Grandma Rose emerged from the kitchen, where she'd apparently been listening to the entire exchange. Maya's heart jumped. She hadn't known her grandmother was visiting this morning. I've been waiting 78 years to see a moment like this, Rose said quietly. Her weathered hands clasped in front of her as she surveyed the scene. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her smile was radiant with pride. Maya felt her own composure waver for the first time since she'd knocked on the door. Grandma, I didn't know you were here. I came early to make pancakes for the family breakfast, Rose said, moving slowly across the room toward Maya. But I think this conversation was more important than breakfast. She reached out and took Maya's hands in her own, squeezing gently. Your great-grandmother Elena would be so proud. You didn't just build a business, sweetheart. You built yourself into the woman she always knew you could become. The room remained frozen as Rose turned to face her son and daughter-in-law. Richard, Linda, I'm ashamed of you both. Her voice carried the gentle authority of a matriarch who'd watched her family make a terrible mistake. This beautiful, talented, determined young woman has been right under your noses for years, and you couldn't see past your own narrow definitions of success. Richard's head dropped into his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed, and his voice was barely above a whisper. Maya, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you an acknowledgement that I was completely, devastatingly wrong about your abilities and your dreams. He stood up slowly, his usual confident posture replaced by the humbled bearing of a man confronting his own failures. I spent so many years trying to protect you from what I thought was inevitable disappointment that I became the source of your disappointment instead. Linda rose from the couch, tears streaming down her face. Honey, I'm so sorry. I thought I was being practical, helping you avoid heartbreak, but all I did was break your heart myself. She took a tentative step toward Maya. Can you ever forgive us for being so blind? Derek cleared his throat, the sound rough with emotion. Maya, I've been thinking about what you said, about us never bothering to really look. You're right. I was so busy being the golden child that I never saw how amazing my sister was becoming. He set the lease agreement on the coffee table with careful reverence. This isn't just impressive business sense. This is you showing more courage and vision than I've ever had in my entire legal career. Uncle Tom, who'd built his identity on recognizing good business opportunities, looked genuinely shaken. Maya, I've been in development for 30 years, and I completely missed the most successful entrepreneur in our own family. That's not just poor judgment, that's professional blindness. Jessica, who'd been quietly observing the family dynamics, spoke up with obvious admiration. Maya, I work with major brands every day, and what you've built is exceptional. The fact that you did it while dealing with this level of family skepticism makes it even more remarkable. Rose squeezed Maya's hand again. Now that's the kind of recognition you deserved all along. For the first time in years, Maya felt like she was standing in a room full of family members who actually saw her. Maya looked around the living room where she'd grown up, feeling like a supporting character in her own family's story, and realized she was finally writing her own ending. The lease agreement sat on the coffee table between them, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of how completely the dynamics had shifted. The rent is market rate, Maya said, picking up the documents and handing them to her father. $1,200 a month, first and last due at signing. I think you'll find I'm fair but professional in my business dealings. Richard accepted the papers with hands that still trembled slightly. Maya, this feels strange, paying rent to our daughter. It should feel like paying rent to your landlord, Maya replied, gently but firmly. This is a business relationship now, Dad. Clean, clear, and based on mutual respect rather than family dynamics. Derek studied his sister with obvious admiration. So, what's next for Pacific Jewelry Holdings? More real estate acquisitions? For the first time since she'd arrived, Maya smiled, a genuine, relaxed expression that transformed her entire face. Actually, I'm opening my first flagship store next month, 3,000 square feet in the Arts District, right next to Bella Vista Boutique. 3,000 square feet? Linda's voice carried awe rather than skepticism. Maya, that's a major retail commitment. I know exactly what I'm doing, Mom. I've been planning this expansion for 8 months. Maya pulled out her phone and showed them architectural renderings of the store design. Custom display cases, a workshop area where customers can watch me work, and space for jewelry-making classes. Uncle Tom leaned in to examine the images, his business instincts engaged despite his earlier humiliation. This looks professional grade. What kind of foot traffic are you projecting? Maya almost laughed at how quickly he'd shifted from dismissing her work to analyzing her business strategy. Based on my current online sales and the location's demographics, I'm projecting six-figure monthly revenue within the first year. Grandma Rose clapped her hands together with delight. A jewelry empire just like Elena always dreamed of building. "Where are you headed now?" Linda asked, as Maya gathered her documents and prepared to leave. Maya jangled her car keys confidently. "To meet with my contractor about the store renovation timeline. Then I have a consultation with a couple who wants custom wedding rings. A $15,000 commission." The family absorbed this information in silence. $15,000 for a single project was more than most of them made in a month. As Maya reached the front door, Derek called out, "Maya, wait! I know this might sound strange coming from me, but I'm genuinely proud of you. Not just for the success, but for the way you handled this whole situation. You could have been vindictive, but you chose to be dignified instead." Maya paused at the threshold of the house where she'd spent so many years feeling small and invisible. "Thank you, Derek. That means more than you know." She walked toward her Tesla Model S, purchased 6 months earlier but kept deliberately low-key, and could feel her family watching from the window. As she started the engine, Maya realized she wasn't driving away from her family. She was driving toward her future, finally free to build the life she'd always envisioned. The scared little girl who'd once sought their approval was gone, replaced by a woman who'd learned the most valuable lesson of all: the only validation that truly matters is the kind you give yourself.